It's that time of the year again. This last few weeks of December, where everyone starts making their best anime of the year you need to see, or my 5 favorite anime of the year kind of videos. Me? I'm not here to do that. I'm here to look back on all the anime I've seen and had throughout the year. Everything new they had from January until December. Quite a challenge, as there's been a lot of anime this year again. And I myself have seen just over 50 different new anime, and I'm going to talk about all of them. The good shows, the bad shows, the amazing shows, and everything else in between. And before you're done watching this video and write an angry comment, no, I have not seen everything. At this point in time, with all the anime we are getting, that is impossible. So there is a high chance that I might have missed something that you absolutely loved, and I'm sorry, that's just how things are going to be, I'm afraid. There might also be some shows that I watched that you might find absolute garbage, and it is also fine. My opinion is what it is, and I won't claim it as the absolute truth. Also, I won't be getting pretentious and tell you what you absolutely must watch. This is mostly just a video to recap and share what I've seen this year, as selfish as that might be. At the very least, I can claim that I've finished more than 2 shows this summer season, as I know there was at least one big AniTuber out there that barely finished 2, so I can be proud of that, I guess. Oh, and none of that, I've watched anime at 2 times speed nonsense here either. I don't partake in that. Now, last year I also made a video like this, and I found that I should have said more about each individual show. Instead of only saying 2 lines about something, I should go more into depth. Now here's the thing, I tried. I really did. And for some it worked. But for some others, yeah, I don't really have a lot to say as much as I try. But I'm also kinda operating on the fact that this video is going to be long enough already. And I'm still going to have to keep things manageable, so I cannot get too detailed about everything, I'm afraid. Also, let's not forget that at least half of these anime are just going to be forgotten about after this year, only for me to remember them randomly in 10 years, making me go, alright, that was a thing. That is just how things are. This year it definitely feels we have entered the era of anime remakes, as there were quite a few of those to go around, but there also weren't as much production issues as last year. Well, there were still a few incidents, but overall it was less. At least the winter season wasn't a bonanza of delays 3 weeks into it, but we did have 1 week where there was not much anime being out because of the Olympics. Physical activity, a weep's worst nightmare. We also had a surprising amount of 24-episode shows, I find. At least they seem more common again. And keep in mind that with these 24-episode long anime, I only mention them in the season they start in. There are some funny coincidences with recurring themes this year as well. The year started with a magic show that went unlocalized, a show that had a purple-haired girl obsessing over magical girls, a show with a blonde delinquent magical girl, and the year ended with shows having those exact same things. Now, those are some weirdly specific coincidences if you ask me. Oh, and the spring season was full of girls who might or might not be gay, who all play musical instruments for some reason. Huh. But alright, I think that is enough yapping, let's get on with the show. And let's rewind our clock back to frigid January. The winter season feels like it is an eternity ago. And last year I complained I didn't really watch much anime in the winter, only getting about 6 shows in, and most of those were sequels too. Which, as a result, had me watching about double the anime this time around. A few sequels here and there, some promising new stuff, but also some very disappointing new shows that I wonder why I even watched them to begin with. There were also 2 ongoing shows from the previous fall season, Frieren and Undead Unluck. Frieren was still amazing, one of my favorite shows in the last few years easily. But I do have to say it took a bit of a turn in the later half of the series, focusing more on the action-packed mage exams with Madhouse delivering some stellar looking animation. However, that would also be my only negative point of the series if I had to name one, as I still rate the show an easy 10 out of 10. I personally prefer the more adventure-based first half of the series a little bit more to the second half, but it is easily the best fantasy show I've seen in recent times. But hey, who am I kidding? We all know that Demon Slayer is probably going to win the Crunchyroll Award for the best fantasy anime again like it did the last few years. In September we got the news that there would be a second season, and I'm looking forward to whenever that drops. I do hope Madhouse gets the time to cook on this production and doesn't get rushed by the production committee, who probably wants to cash in on the popularity right away, but we'll have to wait and see. Undead Unluck remained a solid shonen in the second half, but I do have some gripes to the pacing of it. Starting with the second half, we got an excessive amount of recaps happening at the start of every episode, paired with some weird production choices to go along with it. For example, we'd get a minute-long scene of something that would happen at a later point in the episode, followed by a recap of the last few episodes, and then the opening would play, only to play the entire final scene of the previous episode before the episode starts proper, easily wasting 5 to 6 minutes. Look, I get that they wanted to end the season on a specific point, but I feel that without all of these unnecessary repeats, the show would have been 3 to 4 episodes shorter, and would have an overall better viewing experience. Also, let's not forget that it was a royal pain in the ass for people not in North America to watch this show, kinda making it slip by a lot of people unnoticed, thanks to it being in Disney jail. I do hope we get another season at some point, and hopefully they can avoid these weird direction issues next time. Also done by David Productions, Urusei Yatsura's reboot returned with its second season, and it remained a great comedy throughout. Part of me definitely misses this older kind of comedy, but it didn't really seem much people were talking about it. The show itself is a great production all around, and while the cast is full of assholes, it's full of lovable assholes. And things got a little emotional near the end, but still managed to keep the laughs rolling alongside with it. I also see why people love Lum that much. She's a great character, and if I would have seen the original, she probably would have been one of my first anime waifus, I imagine. Honestly, I'm going to miss this anime. I love seeing these assholes on screen doing weird and kooky shit. It was all around a good time and I had a lot of fun with it. While this was airing, my girlfriend came with the idea that it would be great if David Productions would make a Ranma 1/2 remake since he did a good job here. And little did we know what would happen later in the year. What I didn't expect to return after 3 years was bottom tier character Tomazaki. Honestly, I didn't even think this would get a sequel to begin with, and I had mostly forgotten about its existence other than remembering I enjoyed it back when it aired. Can I call it a successful return, however? Not really. The first half of the season revolved around a school bully scenario that just kinda dragged on forever. It really wasn't the best. It did kinda pick up more in the second half and gave us some relationship developments for Tomazaki, so that was neat I suppose. But it was a bit of a sin how fast they rushed through these developments after the first half plodded along for a good 7 episodes. It really could have been better, I would say. Mashle returned as well with its second season, and holy shit, did the season deliver in ways I did not expect it to. The season was a lot more action focused, and oh boy were these fights actually great. And some of the fights were surprisingly hype. I picked this up on a bit of a whim last year, expecting just a silly comedy show, but it turned into more than I had hoped for. I can't wait for the next season somewhere next year, can't come soon enough. Also man, that opening was catchy. Alright, that covers all the sequels and ongoing shows, so let's take a look at the new stuff this season had to offer and I deemed interesting enough to watch. Fitting for the season, Hokkaido Girls Are Super Adorable was an okay harem-y rom-com set in snowy Hokkaido. In recent years I seem to have developed a bit of a taste for Gyaros, so the show was an easy pick-up to watch. The Gyaro were cute indeed, but in the end I wanted more of the Gyaro MILF instead. Oh dang, screw the main love interest, mommy is where it's at. But as a harem in the post-100 girlfriends landscape, it was just alright. It was a fine time wasted with cute girls, but nothing really exceptional story-wise. The final episode annoyed me though, as they set up the main girl needing to leave to study abroad, and they played the usual fanfare of a heart-wrenching and depressing divide between her and the protagonist, only for her to return in the last minute, saying that the trip always was only going to be 2 weeks long. I feel emotionally blackmailed. Dungeon Meshi. Dungeon Meshi. I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but this show is just fine. A solid 7 or 8 out of 10 fine if you will. People really seem to love this show, and I will argue while it was pretty good, it also didn't really knock my socks off. The cooking scenes were fine, the action was good, the world building was interesting, but yeah, I don't know where all the love and praise came from. Senshi was a fun character though, I love this goober. Anyway, I think I have to run before the fanbase kills me for not unconditionally loving the show. Then we had a trio of shows with the bird mascot syndrome, well, sorta. Sasuke and Peeps was, dear god, what I would call the epitome of sunk cost fallacy. I shouldn't have given this a chance to begin with. Perhaps I was blinded with how much I enjoyed Death Mount Death Play, resulting in giving this a try, as this was also a reverse isekai, at first. What started off with an hour-long first episode, where a tired sailorly man buys a pet bird, only to find out that it's actually a reincarnated powerful mage from another world. No, quite you. Who taught him magic, and after a while lets him travel to the other world. I told you to be silent. After that, the story introduced a knockoff Men in Black organization that hunts down magic users in a normal world, which our protagonist got involved with. And an episode later he ran into magical girls, who also somehow exist in this world. While the final episode threw 2 more different twists at us. I told you to shut up! No, the writing should have been on the wall, as it had every story trope in the kitchen sink thrown at it, resulting in a horrible yet intriguing mess. But it was also horribly animated from episode 2 onwards, and the sound design was all over the place. Like, who had the great idea to make water magic sound like fire magic? Did you guys listen to any of this before shipping it out? This is not what water sounds like. The cast of characters also suffered a major brain fart when someone of the other world entered ours, and instead of sending them back right away, they went on a sightseeing trip for reasons. Which of course ended badly with the government getting involved when she used magic in broad daylight. Wow, who saw that coming? I did, you did, everyone did. Everyone except our main goddamn character. And that bad animation I mentioned only got worse the longer it went on. I mean, look at us on the screen at the moment. What the fuck is this running animation? It's so bad. And what the fuck is this? Which way is he facing? Oh, and the main character always seemed to make every lolly on the planet gravitate towards him, as if he is some sort of lolly magnet, resulting in the most baffling reveal of this entire series. That the organization called the Office Lady is actually a 16-year-old. Why? This added nothing to the entire story. She doesn't even look like a lolly. Why the fuck is this a thing? And no, I don't have anything against lollies, but this was the most stupid, contrived, and unnecessary work pull ever. Can't we just have a nice office lady for once, Japan? God damn it. And somehow the shitty animation quality of the show actually makes the steaming pile of trash that was Kingdoms of Ruin look good. Something I thought I'd never say. Alright, I've ranted enough about this show. Needless to say, of course Kadokawa saw it fit to give this trash a second season. And I say the word season in air quotes here, because with how the last episode ended, it is very obvious that they are pulling the let's sell split core as a second season strategy here. But hey, in the end Peeps got the Chateaubriand meat that he wanted so much, just like these girls did. Ponomichi was advertised as a mahjong show, but it turned more into a well-endowed cute girls do cute things and sometimes mahjong show. I didn't mind it though, it was comfy and it looked good, and the opening song was pretty catchy. I expected the mascot bird to be more relevant, but he was just kinda there in the end. Episode 4 however, was just a sponsor bit for the Mahjong Soul game, pretty unabashedly so too, but hey, get that bag I suppose. Oh, and it was full of kaiji references for some reason. Sure, why not? For some unknown reason, however, this show did not get picked up by any major stream services, so you had to get a bit creative in order to even watch this. The last show that had a bird, kinda, was Metallic Rouge. This was Bone's 25-year anniversary original project and, I wish I could like the show more than I did, because it wasn't really good. The art was nice, the sound direction was good, and the mecha suit designs were great, but then you didn't even get to see them in all that much action anyway. I expected this show to be kind of a Robot of the Week bounty hunting story, but it felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do with itself for the longest time. And so it turned into a convoluted mess that aspired to do way more than it was able to, with a lot of tropes we had already seen in many other places before, yet failing to even execute us properly. I feel the show would have been better if they just kept the plot dumb and focused on well-animated fights, instead of whatever the hell we ended up getting in the end. It had plenty of style, but the vision of the story was haphazardly put together, it feels. Evident by the last 2 minutes of the show being hilariously mismanaged, giving us a plot twist that gets resolved in 10 seconds, and then ending on a cliffhanger for a possible sequel that won't ever happen. I love your work, Studio Bones, but this was just so sad in so many ways. The Witch and the Beast ended up being rather mediocre as well. The story focused on a pair of witch hunters in a gothic modern fantasy world, which I did quite like the vibe and aesthetic of. It was enjoyable enough, despite some flaws, but the final episode was rude. Info dumping us the entire episode, and a big ass revelation at the end about the world that we did not know until that point. For it to probably never to be followed up by a second season. Rude and mean. Hey, at least it was a better show involving witches than the studio's last endeavor. This is now the second time I can reference Kingdoms of Ruin, and I hate that I can do that. Then we had Chained Soldier, which was hyped up to be the next big ecchi show by manga readers, saying it is as good, if not better than the likes of DxD, but that didn't deliver, not at all. Look man, if you adapt an ecchi series and wait until episode 3 to give us some titty, you're not doing a very good job at it, just saying. The studio seemingly did not want to embrace the fact that they were adapting an ecchi manga, and even the other aspects of the show were mediocre at most. The fights weren't too good either, and there was a lot of janky CGI for the enemies. For all intents and purposes, the show felt like a middle-of-the-road 2010s anime. Now, I'm not knocking it for those points, but I just expected a lot more from this with how manga readers were hyping it up beforehand. Seems to be a recurring theme these last few years. It pretty much immediately was announced that there was a second season in the plans, however it was also revealed that another studio would be in charge of it. I guess cutting out all of the ecchi of an ecchi property is a stupid idea in hindsight, who would have thought? But speaking of ecchi, Gushing Over Magical Girls pretty much came out of nowhere, fully embracing the degeneracy and reveling in it. Looking at the seasonal promotions, the show looked like a silly show, where magical girl villains toy with magical girls in kinky BDSM ways. It was a good, trashy, ecchi anime if you will, and for the first half, it was exactly that. We got some good kinky degeneracy, and while not all of the kinks were for me, looking at episode 6 specifically, I have to admit, it was a guilty pleasure, and I really enjoyed watching it. But that changed when episode 7 happened and flipped everything upside down, because holy shit, did it kick into full gear then. It was a change I did not see coming. The only thing we saw coming until that point were the characters, haha. The story direction changed, and we got fight scenes and amazing character development out of nowhere. And unlike Chained Soldier, the studio embraced the material they were working with, and they delivered, making it the surprise hit of the season. The absolute mad lads at the studio in charge, I salute you. Of course, the usual culprits were talking shit about it because of their perceived moral high ground, but the community loved it, and made it one of the most talked about shows of the season. And they did amazing in Japan. The Blu-ray sold out pretty much instantly, shattering all expectations. Despite it coming from a small studio, with almost no budget at all. I love this show. It went from guilty pleasure to easily being my favorite anime of the entire winter season. It is a classic example of game for the plot, stayed for the plot. Also, I praise the absolute based people of culture at HIDIVE, who licensed and aired the show uncensored, while we live in a world where Crunchyroll will do its absolute darnest to censor anything they can if left to their own devices. And in October, we finally got the news that production of a second season was underway, and I can't wait for it to return. Even now at the end of the year, I can say that this is one of my favorite shows of the year. It unironically is that good. Judge me if you want. I had quite a bit to say about the winter season, but spring was no slouch either. And here we had a little bit of everything for everyone. But I will be starting with the sequels as usual. Starting with Konosuba, which was finally back, giving us 11 new episodes to enjoy. It was more of the same. It's not like that's a bad thing, not at all. Kazuma still was a self-absorbed asshole, Aqua kept getting drunk, Darkness was as horny as always, and Mega Man blew shit up. We had a good time. We also got an episode where Kazuma was actually competent for once, which was nice. Man, I miss these assholes, they're all great. And a lot of good laughs were had. What's not great is that we probably have to wait 6 more years for another 11 episodes. I don't get how Kadokawa can keep greenlighting shitty isekais every season and not build on what is a success by giving it more seasons at a faster pace. But well, I guess tastes are subjective. And talking about subjective tastes, Demon Slayer was also back and... Danjiro, dear god, stop looking at me, you're freaking me out! And knew not to expect much from this season, but holy fuck, they really stretched all the material they had to think for this, didn't they? For some reason they even felt the need to redo the 5-minute entry scene from Muzan in the last episode, because they could, I guess. Content-wise, at least we won't be getting any more sad flashbacks from people in the finale, right? Right? I'm going to be proven wrong, aren't I? Also, what a finale that is going to be. 3 movies that are going to be drip-fed over 3 years, I imagine. And then probably also getting a TV release, because they're going to want to milk this to the extreme. I can't say I look forward to it all that much. I'll finish it, but dear lord. I really have grown disillusioned with this series. It started off great, but as soon as they knew they had a golden goose on their hands, they started milking it so badly. It really doesn't help it is all style and no substance at all. Ufotable, please be done with this garbage soon so I can move on to better projects. And no, I don't mean that Genshin one. Black Butler also returned. Somehow. I guess it must be the Fujoshi keeping this alive and kicking. I like Black Butler as a series, and I've got all of the English release manga here behind me in a shelf, but sadly, this pretty boy school arc was never really my favorite to begin with. It didn't look bad, other than the CG elephant in the room sticking out like a sore thumb, and I had a fine time with it. And we got a 5-minute teaser for the next story arc at the end of the last episode, which was later confirmed to be in production. Which brings me to the following. This series is a bit of a wild and fragmented adaptation history, doesn't it? The first season from 2008 was half anime original filler, and the entire second season from 2010 has nothing to do with the manga whatsoever. Then we got a really good adaptation of the Circus arc in 2014, followed by the equally good Book of Murder OVAs. All topped off by a great movie from the Zombies on the Ship arc 7 years ago in 2017. It is weird they never opted for a proper remake from the beginning, and now it has morphed into this weird mess. But at least it is still going, and we are getting new seasons to this day. Speaking of reboots and remakes, another blast from the past was Spice and Wolf, an old favorite of mine. It was known for quite a while that it would return, and people were skeptical how it would turn out. I know I was one of them. Sequel, reboot, what was the plan here? We didn't know at first. And it turned out it was a full-on redo of what was covered before, plus at the end a story arc that originally got skipped over. It took its time to readapt everything, following the novels accurately this time around, and it was great to see Hollow back on screen, cuter than ever. There was some debate over the new animation looking worse than the old show, but I think it was just fine. And instead of having us wait for another 16 years, they confirmed the second season was in the works, which was amazing to hear. It seems we might be getting the full series adapted. The only complaint I would have is that the old opening song is better than the new ones, but hey, that is probably just nostalgia speaking. That and that they should have added in this fall, as it would have fit the season so much better. Another old anime from the 2000s that returned this season was Bartender. Also being a remake that followed the source material this time around. I've been wanting to watch the original, but never got to it, so I instead bar hopped onto this one, haha, and it was a pretty good time. We followed Sasakura going around mixing drinks and changing lives, sometimes literally. But alright, enough getting sentimental about remakes with alcohol in hand, time for the new stuff in town. Kaiju number 8 was a hot new shonen property in the spotlight, to the point that I even saw advertisements for it locally, which was really weird. I quite liked it, but honestly, I wouldn't have minded if it just stayed how the first episodes went with following Kafka around as a cleanup man, which could have been fairly interesting on its own. Instead, it turned into Attack on Titan 2.0. The ending song was done by One Republic, and I didn't know these guys were still around. I heard them on the radio when I went to clown college back in 2010, which I failed by the way, I wasn't funny enough. From the writer of Quintessential Quintuplets, we had Go-Go Loser Ranger, or Ranger Reject, depending on what you want to name it. Instead of 5 identical twins, we got 5 Power Rangers / Kamen Rider wannabes with personality and attitude problems. The Red Ranger was the biggest narcissist you've ever seen, the pink one a massive broke-on, and the blue one seemed to be the only legit good guy of the bunch, even if he had a bit of a rough personality. The green and yellow ones, they didn't get much attention, but I can't trust those faces. You know they're up to no good. But the real main character of this show was a lovely random mook of the alien invaders, Fighter D, who was sick and tired of being beat up every week in the Rangers game show to make them look good. What followed was a compelling action show that was unfortunately resigned to the depths of Disney jail and languished in obscurity. We used to joke about Netflix jail, but it seems that Disney now has taken up that mantle. But but the second season ends next year April, and I will be watching. Also, for some reason, this season had a lot of shows with cute girls doing music things, and sometimes even being gay. Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night Sky started off pretty good, but I felt it bit of a bit more than it could chew, as it started to fumble some of the ideas it had in the later half. The show had some pretty solid animation for what was a group of girls coming together to become a virtual YouTube artist. As if the YouTube life is that easy, let me tell you. The algorithm is not your friend if you're just starting out. But hey, the show was fine, but as I said, it kind of fumbled the finale. Also, it just introduced plot points and characters that in the end never ended up mattering. And it debated us with a Yuri relationship that never resulted into anything. Hey, at least it looked good. Kyoto Animation presented us the final season of Hibiki Euphonium this spring. Why am I putting it here instead of in the sequel section? I'll be honest, before this year I hadn't even seen a show, as it was on the infinite plan to watch list, as I would get to it someday as I heard it was good. And so, somewhere in January, I binged through the other seasons and the movies in preparation for this last season, and I think this might be Kyoto Animation's best show, hands down. It feels bittersweet that the show is over, and it made me feel kinda empty, even though I binged pretty much all of it in half a year time. It also did a great job at making me feel nostalgic to a time on school I never experienced for myself, which is a weird but not unpleasant feeling. Whisper Me a Love Song is a perfectly fine Yuri, for as much as it got animated that is. The production suffered greatly from all kinds of issues. I could make an entire video out of this if I wanted to. The animation was rough, and as a cherry on top in the end we only got 10 out of 12 episodes. The studio did The Witch and the Beast the previous season just fine without any issues, and if you look back to the season before that, you see they animated Kingdoms of Ruin. Now, if they didn't work on that piece of shite, this show probably would have been fine. This is now the third time I mentioned at the Front to Humanity in this video, and I realize it's probably going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Anyway, it was outsourced to some Korean studio which ended up doing most of the work on the last few episodes that we did get. And God bless those people, as the studio itself sure didn't seem to care. The second ending went way harder than it had any right to, and eventually, in November it was announced that the last 2 episodes would drop after Christmas, giving it the Zom 100 treatment. However, at the point of writing this, these episodes have yet to come out, so I don't know if they were any good or not. But we had one more music show this season, Girls Band Cry. And I admit, I didn't watch this during the season and binged it after the fact, as the show was in a bit of an awkward situation to get a hold of. But man, it was a great show. Hell, I would even name it contender for the best anime of the year. While the plot on paper looks somewhat the same as Jellyfish, all what that show attempted and failed at, Girls Band Cry delivered on. Giving us the story of a bullied girl who ran away from college all the way to Tokyo, where she starts a band with a group of other girls, along with all the drama and teenage soul-searching that comes with it. It is not often that I get invested in these kind of stories, but holy shit did this one drag me in, it was just so good. I also felt the show was slightly more realistic with how the girls didn't end up becoming a huge success overnight, unlike the Jellyfish crew, who got lucky at every turn. It's a nice contrast. Of course, I'm going to have to mention the animation. Why? Well, this was a 3D animated show, and while I have seen some of those in the past, they all had this uncanny stilted movement to the characters. It looked janky, for the lack of a better description. I am not sure what magic they worked on this, but the end result looked amazing, and I forgot what I was watching at times. Everything looked so good and the characters moved so smoothly. They must have spent considerable time on this. I'm pretty sure they did not do this out of concerns for saving budget. I'm only afraid of how it will age and how this will look in a few years' time, but that's a question for the future. The only issue with the show is how Toei handled its release, as it was almost nowhere to be found if you wanted to see this subbed in English, until later, when they first put it on the Microsoft Store for some reason. Also, between this show and Hibiki, I'm getting kinda depressed I never did anything with music back in my high school days. It's making me feel weirdly melancholic. Yuri Bait perhaps, but no music in this one. Instead, Voice Actor Radio was a show about showing the struggles of up-and-coming voice actors. It gave us some totally platonic baiting scenes. Don't worry, the friends at best and enemies at worst. It probably wasn't the best show of the season, but it was still enjoyable, and the insight into the voice acting industry was interesting. The last show with cute girls doing cute something was Doomsday Train to the End of the World, and it was weird. How weird? Yes. It was a wonderfully weird show about a girl wanting to reconnect with a friend that ran away, and that made viewers question their sanity with all the crazy things that happened in it. It was a train ride through a bizarre world full of surprises and questions, but in the end, it actually managed to make some sort of sense. The show was enjoyable, but I wish it had more episodes, simply so we could have seen more of the train stops and the absurdity that takes place at them. And for some reason the ending song made me feel weirdly nostalgic, but I can't really pinpoint why it did that. Mysterious disappearances was something I quite liked, a mystery show with horror elements from urban legends, both things I quite enjoy. However, every big YouTuber wouldn't give you any more information about the show other than the main lead having big boobs. They didn't even bother trying to describe what the show was about. Which was a shame, it was a pretty solid show, and funnily enough, I remember this being announced to be in production last year. I ended up thinking that it was Dark Gathering, until I saw this on the anime chart for the season, and I remembered its existence. Various yokai and urban legends were the subject matter in the few mysteries that got tackled, before they decided to give this an anime original ending. The true horror of any anime, let me tell you that. I am very disappointed. I thought we moved away from this practice. Well, I guess it's time to get the manga instead. Last but not least, and technically from last year, I also saw the Spy Family movie in the cinema. Which was also the first time I was actually able to see an anime movie in the cinema over here. As usually, they're only shown here in very limited locations and for a very short amount of time. Wait, you actually telling me that Crunchyroll did something good for once with this? Inconceivable! The movie itself was a good time, it's more Spy Family, what else is there to say? Some of the animation on the fighting scenes was really well done however, making me forget what show I was watching at times. It was a summer of love and comedy. The season was full of rom-coms and light on action. I also want to mention that this is where there was another season of Monogatari that I wanted to watch, but unfortunately I'm still behind the season and some movies, so I couldn't, which sucks really. Too little time and too much to watch and other things to do. And too little time might be the reason that this is a season that had a weird case of me dropping 2 shows, a thing I rarely do. The dubious honor goes to Nari Nari Cheer for You, and it was not because it was a bad show per se. The show didn't know what it wanted to do with its story direction. Did it want to be a cheerleading anime, or did it want to be a show about girls making YouTube videos? And it just kinda meandered along, doing nothing much for 5 episodes before I dropped it. And from what I read online after the fact, it seemed that it still had these direction issues until the very end. The show at least looked nice with a distinct art style, and had that much going for it. Tasuketsu on the other hand, my brother and Anki, this shit was bad. Now let me get this straight. I love me some Death Game Battle Royale anime. I know they usually aren't great, but I just really like them. It's just my guilty pleasure. It is an easy setup for some cool characters having cool fights and a simple story, though somehow they always manage up shitting the bed near the second half story-wise. This one though, I don't even know what the story tried to do. As it went on a breakneck pace, and the characters and the viewer had not even a second to breathe, with all the rapid cuts in between the scenes that it did. Was the director of this on crack? Or was it a zoomer who needs 4 instances of Subway Surfer on his screen at all times to remain engaged? The first episode ended with the main character being killed, which would have been an interesting twist, if he wasn't the main character, so you knew he would come back somehow. And not even a few minutes into episode 2, he was back and alive like nothing ever happened, and the pace continued like a bullet train. Oh, and we had a guy who traded in his balls for infinite ammo. Okay, I guess. Nah, I just couldn't with this one. 0 out of 10, go directly to the trash bin and do not pass start to collect your money. And I hope to never see your face again. Alright, for sequels, we had Bocchi the Superhero returning, and they gave us their version of the Shibuya incident. No, I'm not kidding, that is a massive black dome covering Shibuya. Again. Jokes aside, last year when I was working on that year's video, Shy's first season was still airing, and it was just about done when I was done with the video. And the show just kinda stopped at that point. The 12th episode was Shy getting a cold, and nothing really important happened the rest of the episode. Which was a bit of a weird stopping point to leave us on for the better part of a year, as I assumed it was going to be 24 episodes. Partially thanks to that, in the end I didn't really know what to think of the show, as it hinted at some stuff in the background that never ended up happening, or maybe I just overanalyzed stuff. And throughout the year I thought more of a thought about it, and I came to the conclusion that it was a weirdly clean and bloodless show, and that it needed a bit more of an edge for it to stand out. But I would be there to see where the second core would go and... Oh, well, I wonder if they heard me that I was talking about it needing more edge. Even so, in the end the show never really did something exceptionally good or bad. I guess it's just one of those series you can call painfully mediocre. As for the other sequel in the season, I didn't expect the second season of Oshinoko this fast, but it was great. Well, the first half or so was alright, I would say. The 2.5D theater arc was interesting enough, but it really took off after that wrapped up. It ended up progressing the overarching plot in ways I didn't expect, with some shocking twists and turns in the last few episodes, reigniting my interest in the series, as nothing really ever reached the hype of the first episode last year. And maybe these last two episodes of this season even reached that peak of the first episode last year. The entire season I was wondering why the ending put such a focus on Ruby, however, as she wasn't really prevalent in 3/4 of the season. But with the final episode, yeah, that made a lot of sense in hindsight. I cannot wait to see what happens in the next season, that is hopefully out next year. However, I've heard some worrying things from the manga readers, as the manga is now done and the ending seems quite divisive. What is it you're saying? 99% of the footage I used here is Kana? Yes? What is the problem exactly? And from 2.5D theater we go to 2.5 dimensional seduction. Wait, why is it localized like this? I'm not an expert at Japanese, and even I can tell you that the name means 2.5D Ririsa or something in that vein. Where the hell are you getting the seduction from? Anyway, it was a slightly different take on the girls cosplaying and guy helps her out thing that my dress up darling did 2 years ago. It wasn't a bad show, however. It was a pretty good insight into the cosplaying world, making me feel my cosplay for the convention I went to this summer was painfully mediocre. For some reason, things got really emotional during the Comic Cat story. I didn't expect that. It did kind of feel that the main character was slowly building up a harem of pretty cosplayer girls though. Also, the main two girls kinda look like Mash from Fate Grand Order and Rise from Persona 4. Tell me I'm wrong. Senpai as an Otokonoko was... Alright, I'm going to be a tad too ranty here, so bear with me please. It was a story about a bunch of teenagers trying to find themselves in their sexuality. One of them was a boy who was in love with his childhood friend, but was afraid to admit that he was gay and come out with it. And the main character loves cute stuff and likes dressing up in girls' clothes. No, he's not trans. He's an Otokonoko. It is in the title for Christ's sake, and if you watched it, you would know. As you can hear, I am kinda annoyed at that. But why do you might ask? Well, there were a few people who wanted to make him something that he isn't, just for the personal agendas. That's bad. Stop doing that. That is not the author's intention. However, on the other side of things, this show is also the catalyst alongside another yaoi series for Crunchyroll to remove their comment section, because it was full of hate speech. That is a bad thing to do too. Grow the fuck up and go watch a shonen series or something, because it is clearly more your IQ level if you do these kind of things. And don't go claiming that the West has infiltrated anime and manga or something dumb like that. Stories like this have been prevalent in Japanese media for decades now. Get your head out of your ass. Okay, that's it. Rant over. I'm sorry about that, but these things had to be said. Because people on both sides of the fence were being stupid about this anime on social media. The show itself did a decent job with the subjects it tackled, though maybe playing things a bit too safe, and I feel it ran out of steam in the last third. It was announced that there will be a sequel movie early next year, so it's probably going to take half a year or more after that for non-Japanese people to see how this ends. Bummer. Furthermore, we had a visual novel adaptation with Atri, and, like usual, the result was pretty mixed. But then again, it is also not easy to condense a visual novel into a 13-episode anime. It was alright, it had some good world building, but maybe the finale moved a little bit too fast. And I'm not sure if I really like how it concluded. The show was fine. It wasn't horrible at least. I don't have much more to say about it. Speaking of games, I didn't expect Sakuna of Rise and Ruin to get an anime of all things. It was a little Metroidvania released a few years ago made by a small 10-man development team. The game was fine, I never got around to finishing it, but I guess people in Japan really loved it, enough to turn it into an anime apparently. The story was condensed well enough and it didn't really skip many important parts, but the animation was a bit more limited at times. It was fine in the end, nothing great and too much to write home about, and perhaps you have a better time just playing the game instead. My dear friend No-Katan was hyped up to be the most comedy ever by plenty of people, and content creators on the internet try to gaslight people into believing this. And honestly, for what was promised and what the first teaser showed, it was boring as fuck. Okay, maybe that is a little bit too harsh, as I did end up finishing it and it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen. The later episodes actually got some chuckles out of me, but it is still far from the barrage of absurdist comedy that was promised. I feel it should have just been advertised as a cute girls doing cute things show, and it would have stuck the landing a lot better. I know, comedy is subjective and all that, but as it stands, this was barely possible. However, this too is Yuri. The show that did steal all the laughs, however, was Too Many Losing Heroines. And I was a gremlin throughout the whole thing, and got many laughs out of me without even trying too hard. Take notes, No-Katan. It also looked amazing, and might just be the best looking show of the season. However, there was some competition for that. But there were some people that were complaining that the show was a waste of time, as no one wants to see a guy being a therapist for rejected girls, while also really hating and overblowing the importance of one specific ecchi scene in general. But I didn't really see an issue with this, because this is exactly what the show advertised itself as it was a more original take on the rom-com genre than we usually get. And the ecchi scene was like, the only one in the entire series, get over it. But hey, what do I know? I'm not very eloquent with my words and I struggle with describing things at times. It is a miracle that I managed to make videos like this to begin with. What I do know is that this was a very fun show, and it balanced comedy and dramatic moments pretty well, and that I really enjoyed watching this. The only issue, however, is that the curse of anime original final episode struck once again, as the final episode was fully anime original. However, it didn't give us a bullshit original ending, so I can kind of forgive it, especially since it seems the second season is in the works already. Staying within the genre, Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian is also a perfectly fine rom-com, but I do kind of feel it lost some steam after the first two episodes. The comedic aspects of the show are great, but then it switched to a student council drama that didn't really grab people all too much. And even the main character Alia got outdone by the main character's sister, who was a massive bro-con and her antics were the best part of the show hands down. It was made aware rather quick after it was done airing that it would be getting a follow-up season, so I'll see where it goes. And to top it off, every episode had a different ending song, which surprised me mid Miku's World Is Mine, and if you are an anime veteran, it hit you in the nostalgia, with Harui's Hara Haru Yukai. Damn, hearing both of these covers makes me feel old. And from the outflow of Ryoka, we got Shoshin How to Be Ordinary. This made a lot of people sad that we weren't getting more Ryoka, but it was still pretty good. We followed the two protagonists solving the most mundane of mysteries, and then all of a sudden, stuff got serious when we had to deal with the kidnapping case. But why did they want to be ordinary? Because they were too smart, and they didn't want to stand out. I'm not sure if that ended up working out though. This show also looked downright gorgeous, and that is probably why we only got 10 episodes. But we will be getting a second core next year, and it is most likely done like this to keep the cinematic quality going. It is probably not everyone's cup of tea because it was a slow burn, but I enjoyed my time with it, and I probably will when it returns next year too. Man, I know that we are getting spoiled with confirmations that some shows are getting a second season next year, but I also know it's a luxury. And then we had Code Geass, Rose of the Recapture, and I'm torn, I really am. I enjoyed the show, I really did, but did this need to exist? One could say the same for the Lelouch of the Resurrection movie, which this is basically a sequel to. No, I like Code Geass. The first two seasons are some of my favorite anime of all time, but much like that movie, this series is fine. It's not the worst thing out there, but yeah, why do they even exist? The story focuses on the struggles of Princess Sakuya in Hokkaido, years after the original story concluded. Or rather, after the movie I guess. As a splinter faction of Britannia, with the very original name of Neo-Britannia, has taken over the island, while a local resistance fights against them. Simple premise, right? It starts out as a fairly competent and good-looking show. The action scenes are good, the nightmare frames look great, and the opening song goes really hard. We also get to see some familiar faces. Cornelia is around, we see members of the Knights of Round, Suzuku shows up for a small cameo along with Nunnally, and a lot of other faces just show up for a few seconds to remind you that they existed. The most interesting one of these is Nina showing up, trying to fix the mess she made in Season 2 by inventing the flare nukes that caused numerous innocents to die, and with her help they take down the last remaining warheads and the flying fortress that launched them. It is a rather nice way to wrap up her story. And with it, the efforts to capture Hokkaido from Britannian rule are well underway. That is, until the third act, which, why? What the hell are we doing here? All of a sudden, the world is flooded by mysterious robots coming from the oceans, and they just kinda indiscriminately start murdering everyone. Honestly, the opening act to this felt weird to watch, as this was some sort of alien invasion or horror story with how surgically humans got wiped out without any emotion from the assailants. It felt like I was watching a completely different show all of a sudden. And so it turns out that the leader of Neo Britannia was a clone of Emperor Charles all along. He was supposed to inherit the mind and memories of him, which ended up never happening. And as a result of that, he just kinda decided to commit genocide on all of humanity, while sitting in his mech in a floating castle, high in the clouds, like a JRPG villain. And why did he want to murder all of humanity? Even when Sakuya directly asks him, we get no answer. He just kinda felt like it, I guess. Worst of all, Lelouch being alive had no impact on any of this. All he did was giving Sakuya gears off screen before the season event started, and that's it. We don't even see him react to all the chaos going on worldwide. He's just being a hobo in the desert. What was even the point of the movie if he's not going to have any relevance in the universe going forward? And this is why I'm conflicted. It started out pretty solid, but what the hell is this third act all about? All of this got crammed into 4 movies, or well, 12 episodes for us. But we definitely needed more time to build all of this up, as the villain reveal in the end just kinda comes out of nowhere. And I know, Code Geass has always been a bit of a train wreck even in the first 2 seasons, but it was never this bad. This has been in the works since the Resurrection movie apparently, back in 2017. And this was the direction you wanted to go? Not even multiple seasons? Though while I'm recording this, it did get announced that there were more projects in the works, so we'll see what happens, I guess. In the end, I suppose it was a fine watch. But I'm also not sure it quite deserves the 6.5 it has on my anime list. But oh boy does it make me question what the thought process was here. Also, I'm pretty sure not many of you knew it even existed at all, as it was shown as 4 movies in Japan like I said, and here it was relegated to Disney jail. Which keeps surprising me, because the content in this show, and Bleach as well, is not really Disney friendly I would say. Oh well, what do I know. Last but not least, I guess by technicality, Uzumaki counts for summer season, and oh boy. This show is 5 years in production to deliver one good looking yet kinda fast paced episode, and then it all spiraled out of control. That pacing got faster each continuing episode, and the second episode in particular had such a massive drop off in animation quality that you could see PNG assets being moved on the screen, and the show never really recovered from this. Wait a minute, that walking animation looks familiar. This show is up there with Sasaki and Peeps with the worst animation of the year, and I say animation with air quotes. In part thanks to this, it turned into an unintended comedy. If it wasn't for the bizarrely bad animation, it was for the bizarre ideas Junji Ito himself cooked up. Like what do you mean? These guys control tornadoes like it's a mecha? And what the fuck is this? When it comes to adapting Junji Ito's manga to anime, it really seems there's some sort of curse put on him. And with how long this was in production, it really makes no sense it turned out this way. Some fingers are being pointed at Warner Bros. Mishandling this somehow, and seeing their track record with anime, yeah, it wouldn't be too far off. It would be nice if we can get a What Happened style video report on this, because I bet it is very interesting to take a look behind the curtains what went down here. This video has been going on for a while, but we finally made it to the current season. And it wouldn't be fall season if it wasn't absolutely stacked with great shows. But this also comes with a problem, as I'm writing and editing this video in the second half of this season, so some shows aren't quite done yet. Hell, some of them will go into the next year for 12 more episodes. Because of that, I'm editing this part a little bit later than the rest, but I try to keep it as much in line with the rest of the video as possible. Now I could just wait until the season is over for the entire video, but I really want this kind of video to be done in the end of December. It just feels right, you know. But alrighty then, with that out of the way, let's get into the madness that was this year's fall season. First off, another dropped show, Blue Miburo. Not to say this was a bad show, but it didn't really do it for me. I expected a lot more action out of this historical show, and the first 3 episodes were just Okita and the boys chilling in Kyoto. Hell, episode 1 even went out of its way to resolve the action off screen, which left me rather disappointed. It also happened to air weirdly late into the season, 3 weeks after everything else had already started. No, I just had to drop this one. The season was already too full as it was. Before we get to the rest of the new stuff, it's time for the sequels. And boy was anything good with the sequels alone. Bleach was back in all its glory, but half a year later than I anticipated. And I guess they needed all that additional time for all these amazing fights, as it was definitely worth the wait. Last year I made a video about the history I had with this series, and that I was overjoyed with it being back and getting a lot of praise. In that video I also mentioned that people's opinions will eventually turn sour, and this is the point where I expected this to happen, as a lot of people found the manga getting worse at this point in time. But surprisingly enough, people are still enjoying it immensely, and I'm quite glad to see that. One final season will remain after this, and I can't wait to see the finale animated. However, I'll also be sad, as it really will be the end of Bleach. Come on, Kubo, continue that Hell Chapter 1 shot already. I want more Bleach, I need it. What I didn't need, but I'm glad that I got, was more Sword Art Online alternative. Or, as Manny and I call it, the better Sword Art Online. The show didn't waste any time on reintroducing us to anyone after 6 years of absence, which ultimately was fine, though I wouldn't have minded it. Instead it dropped us right into the game, with a new tournament where cute gun-wielding girls maniacally kill one another. I'm not exaggerating, these girls are fucking unhinged. Will we get more of this series in the future? Time will tell. Genshin is also back, overall having a stronger outing this time. The story and action direction definitely feeling a lot better this time around. I really don't have much more to say about this one, but things are progressively getting better. And it is giving me that samurai action that I was missing with Blue Miburo. Ron Kimonohashi returned as well this fall, and, you know, before this ad I was weirdly looking forward to this show by quite a lot. Now don't get me wrong, I quite enjoyed the show last year, but I wouldn't say it was the most life-changing thing I've ever seen. Yet somehow, I was really looking forward to seeing the show return. I know I'm a sucker for thrillers and detective stories, but I was still taken aback by my own feelings here. As for this second season, they really wasted no time at all getting back into the swing of things, and they stepped up the scale and the urgency of the cases right away, with multiple murders happening in broad daylight in Shibuya. Making this yet another Shibuya incident, if you will. That is the 3rd time in a year now. After that the cases became a little bit more low stakes again. I sincerely hope we get more of this anime in the future. I absolutely love this silly duo solving crimes. Though the whole thing about Ron having Geass powers is kind of an afterthought at this point. Those were all the sequels, so let's get into the... Wait a minute, what's happening? What's this? Right, ReZero. Now, once again, I have to confess, I've never seen ReZero until earlier this year, much like Hibiki Euphonium. Unlike that show, however, it was because in general I've not been giving most isekai much of a thought, as most of them have been, well, utter garbage. Sure, I watched and enjoyed quite a few of them, but even back in 2016, the isekai fatigue was already setting in with how much trash we were getting. And holy shit, if I just knew how much worse it was going to be 8 years later, dear lord. Even despite the praises of the massive fanbase, I didn't really give it a shot. I didn't think twice about it. Nothing against the show either. I was just neutral towards it, I guess. However, at the beginning of the year, my girlfriend insisted that I would give it a shot, as she wanted to rewatch it in order to get ready for the announced 3rd season, and so I gave it a try. And I feel bad for isekai shows. There are so many shows out there that are not worth anyone's time, and are just useless wish fulfillment. And watching ReZero only reinforced that opinion. There are maybe about 10 isekai or less out there that are worth a damn, and here we are getting all this worthless garbage shoveled at us like it's fast food. ReZero does and achieves a lot of things that all those shows wished you could aspire to do. Subaru might be a divisive character, hate him or love him. I know I want to punch him at times for being stupid. But the story is well thought out and well written, and it managed to even make me forget that the show is an isekai, as it doesn't really talk much about it or makes it an important plot point. Season 1 was a rollercoaster ride which I enjoyed very much. The second season though, honestly a bit of a slog to binge and to get through. And season 3, I returned to what season 1 did, but unfortunately mostly set up for the second half that will come in a month's time. But I can't wait to see where the story goes from here. Alright, now we're really done with all the sequels. Dan 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 is absolutely wild. Aliens, ghosts, and a ball-stealing turbo granny cause our true protagonists all kinds of headaches, and the animation is absolutely amazing. It kind of reminds me of those early days of Bleach before they went to Soul Society, which I absolutely love, with the cast fighting supernatural enemies, but also showing us their daily lives. However, just with the zaniness cranked up to the max. And this might be the first time that an anime lives up to the hype that the manga readers have been promising in the last 3 years, as I was kinda dreading it to be disappointing again. But hey, I've been convinced. I hope we get a second season very soon though, but picking up that manga is very tempting right now. Also, this now makes 2 shows this year to have an absolute banger of an opening done by Creepiness, who keep reinventing music instruments. Marshall's opening at a creaky spring. And Dan Dance features a screaming pigman. Staying in line with the supernatural, we have a terrified teacher at Ghoul School. Wait, Ghoul School? Who the fuck localized this and thought this was a good idea? What the hell do you mean ghouls? I'm pretty sure people nowadays know what a yokai is supposed to be. And even if you don't, the show explains to you what they are. Alright, anyway, it is in my eyes a pretty funny comedy about a teacher who gets roped into a teaching job at the school for yokai, which he doesn't know about at first. But he will be fine, as it turns out he's a descendant of Abe no Seimei, and the students are more terrified of him than he is from them. He also seems to have some sort of fetish for uniforms, school ones included. Like I said, it's a decent comedy, and it's gotten more laughs out of me than Nokoton already. Also, this little fellow is amazing, just look at how gooby he is. Tying the knot with an Amagami sister is a story about a guy who moves into a shrine where multiple girls live and... Wait a minute. Welcome back, Temple. There really isn't much more I can say about this. It's a harem show about a guy living in a shrine who has to marry one of the girls. We've all seen this story before. Until episode 10, where they changed the setting of the story to the high school, and... I'm not sure how much of a fan of this I am. And I have to admit, it looks really pretty despite it being a very simple show. Just like how the stories of girls who can be magicians also look really pretty. And that's probably the best I can say about it. It is a story about essentially a bunch of muggles attending a pity course at not Hogwarts, with a teacher who wants to teach them magic anyway, before she just kinda up and leaves the story. I'm half wondering why I even stuck with this one, as there really isn't much happening, but like I said, at least it looked pretty. Also, for some reason at the midway point in this series, it felt that the show started having some weirdly homoerotic tension out of nowhere. Alrighty then. Or maybe I'm just imagining things. No magicians, but back to magical girls for these next 2 shows. Magia Magical Girls Inc. is a show where magical girls are corporate employees, who save the populace from monsters that may appear in the world. It's an interesting take on magical girls, and I'm commended that it didn't go all grimdark for once. It seems to be quite popular in Japan, so I wouldn't be surprised seeing more seasons of the show down the road, and I wouldn't complain if that did happen. Acro Trip is about a girl named Date, who moves to a town and gets really obsessed with a local magical girl and ends up becoming part of the evil team who she fights. Wait a minute. Purple hair, obsessing over magical girls, part of the evil team. Utena, is that you again? This year now has 2 purple-haired girls obsessing over magical girls while being on the evil team. Now that's a weird coincidence I didn't expect. I call it an evil organization, but it's just really one theater kid with illusions. And oh boy is he a drama queen. I've seen people call this PG-13 gushing over magical girls with all the edges shaved off, and yeah, I see the comparison. It is a rather cozy show with low stakes, and it kinda feels like watching Team Rocket fumble about and failing any plan to conceive. Not the best, but also not the worst show. Speaking of coincidences, Touhou was an older mattering anime that did not get picked up by any streaming services, also making it twice that it happened this year. I wonder if Crunchyroll and other services just hate Mahjong, or if they don't want anything to do with gambling shows, as there has to be some sort of reason for this. This show isn't as comfy as Ponomichi, however. It's edgy, it takes itself too serious, but it is dumb fun. It also has one hell of a catchy opening song. Another parallel with the beginning of the year that could be made is the Ranma 1/2 remake. I know a lot of people that are looking forward to this one, but I hate to say that I enjoyed Urusei Yatsura more. I just really enjoyed its zany slapstick humor, and I kinda went into this one expecting the same, but I got a romantic comedy instead. The wacky humor does ramp up a bit in the later half, and I hope it gets more in the later seasons that we're apparently getting. It is weird, however, to think that this is a Mappa production, one that was already done before it even aired. Have they learned their lesson from last year? Maybe they have. Time will tell. If My Wife Becomes an Elementary School Student, or Tsumasho for short, is a story about a woman reincarnating, kind of, and meeting her family again after 10 years after she passed away, only to find out that her life has come to a complete standstill without her. It's an interesting drama where she tries to get her husband and daughter to move on with her life, but you also know she can't stay around like this forever. It is a show that will make you think about life and death, and can make you feel pretty existential at times. And I'm afraid that the ending is going to make me cry like a bitch. Oh boy, there's also something I can say about You Are Miss Servant. Servant? Are we doing this dumb localization crap again? Its Japanese title clearly has Maid in the name. What are you guys even doing at this point with all these dubious title translations this year? Your boy is not because it was a depressing or a bad show, but it does its best at annoying me just enough with some story decisions. It is a story about a guy one day having an ex-assassin maid on his doorstep which he employs, and then by the end of the 3rd episode, she starts attending school with him, making me question her age all over again. She looks like an adult, but the story itself also keeps it vague on purpose. And by the end of the 4th episode, it introduces rival assassins who want to take her out, only for an episode later to resolve this and having her attend school and daily life again. Come on, Arthur, stick to a direction please. Where do you want the story to go? Just wait a second. An assassin maid and a young master. Now where have I seen this before? From Not Roberta and Not Garcia, we segue into more Madhouse anime of the current year. Trillion Game is a story about two friends, basically bullshitting their way into the industry, with the goal of making, as the title says, $1 trillion yen. Now, I'm still not entirely sure how they want to do this, as they are still just scamming and bullshitting their way to the corporate ladder at the moment. It is a 26 episode slow burn that is probably not going to be interesting for everyone, but it has my attention. And I am fully expecting this plot to go wrong at some point. There is no way their scams can keep working, right? Last but certainly not least, we have Orb on the movement of the Earth. And what can I say? The show is probably up there as my favorite of the season, and it came pretty much out of nowhere. It follows the story of a kid in the 15th century who is too smart for his own good and wants to study astronomy instead of theology, proving that the Earth is not the center of the universe despite it being seen as heresy. Yet he does so anyway, fully well knowing what the consequences are if he gets caught in the act, simply because he cannot fight off that one thing that drives humanity: curiosity and the thirst for knowledge. After its first 2 episodes came out, I randomly got this feeling that I was watching something that was going to be absolutely amazing. Profound even, if you will. I don't know why I did, I was just getting real good vibes of it somehow. And then episode 3 happened, which left me speechless until after the credits rolled, pretty much confirming that feeling. And I'm not going to say much else about the plot of this one. And I know it's not going to be for everyone, but if there is one thing you take away from this long ass video, it is that I recommend you to watch the show. It is just that good of a show, and I didn't expect this when I went into it. From what I heard, it should be a complete adaptation, so I guess we'll see by the end of it if I still like it as much. Find it out in next year's video, I guess. With shows like this and Frieren, I wonder if Madhouse might be back to their golden age of over a decade ago, and it is something that I would love to see. And that brings us to the end of this video. It's quite a long one, I do admit. In last year's video, I said it was a good year for anime. Well, despite some industry struggles it was. But is that statement also true this year? Well, it's not a bad year really, but I do feel it lacks a bit of a punch compared to the previous few years, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it is a lack of heavy hitters in every season, I don't know. It definitely felt that most of the big shows were in fall. But then again, that is often the case, isn't it? And then there is also that sizable amount of anime remakes we're now getting. And, while it is nice that some series are finally getting the love they deserve, it also feels weird seeing how many it are. If you were to ask me what my favorite show of the year was, I'm going to say Girls Bench Cry. It definitely was a surprise hit for me, and it hooked me like no other. Dandadan and Orb deserve some praise too, as I'm immensely enjoying both of these at the moment, but I will have to see how those wrap up. Which is kinda weird to say, because at least Dandadan should be done by the time this video goes live. But it isn't at the time I'm writing this. I'm also going to have to give a shout out to Gushing Over Magical Girls. That show was great and a blast to watch. And I really wanted to love the new Code Geass entry, but yeah, that didn't really work out now, did it? As I said at the beginning of the video, I like looking back on the anime of the year and what I've watched. But yeah, let's not fool ourselves. We will probably forget half of these shows even existed around this time next year. It is what it is, I'm afraid. But alright, this video has gone on long enough, and if you made it all the way here, thank you for watching. I hope you had some enjoyment of me recapping the anime that I watched this year. If you liked this video, leave a like, or maybe subscribe, or leave a comment, or catch me streaming on Twitch to tell me that my taste in anime is shit. Whatever you want. This was my name is Sora, and once again, thank you for watching. I wish you a good new year, and that it may be blessed with great anime.